Andrew Saunders' parents separated when he was young. From then on, he lived with his sister and his mom, but for all intents and purposes, he had a very supportive and loving upbringing. In his dad's absence, his grandparents were an important part of his upbringing, with his granddad pretty much being his best father figure. Andrew first met Zoe Morgan in June 2014. They were both about 18-year-old and they went on to form a relationship. This relationship carried on until about July 2015. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of why their relationship split up or whatever, but they did get back together a few months later. But they didn't tell the parents. It was later said that Zoe's dad thought it was quite obvious from very early on that Andrew was very controlling towards Zoe, to the extent that on one occasion Zoe had told her dad that Andrew had grabbed her around the throat during an argument. A couple more months down the line, in November 2015, Andrew's granddad died. Now let's not forget that Andrew's granddad has been like a father to Andrew, so this were a big loss to him. Skip forward a couple of months to 2016. Andrew's now 20-year-old. He was working as a receptionist at an hotel and he was studying accountancy in college. In June 2016, Zoe, who was now 21-year-old, was working at Matalan, which is a fashion and homeware retailer. The brand she was working on is on Queen Street in the centre of Cardiff, Wales. It was while she was working there that she met 33-year-old Lee Simmons. At around the 12th of July, her and Lee formed a relationship. And according to Andrew, it was about that time that out of the blue, Zoe just stopped speaking to him. So when he did manage to speak to her a few days after the 13th of July, he accused her of cheating on him. Of course, she denied it. Andrew then started looking through Zoe's Facebook, scouring for clues of if she's cheating and who with, and he noticed that Lee Simmons had been liking a lot of Zoe's photos. Andrew then clicked onto Lee's profile and he's reading through his posts and he comes to the conclusion that Lee and Zoe are in a relationship. But it weren't until the 19th of July 2016 that Zoe told Andrew over Facebook that their relationship weren't really working. At this point, Andrew again accuses her of cheating. He said, "You're definitely chatting to somebody else. I will kill whoever it is." He told her, "I still love you," before threatening, "I'll torch his house." At one point, he even went to the extent of sending her a picture of her house. It was the back of the house. And he went on to say that he'd contacted Lee on Facebook and he'd threatened to kill him, saying he would smash his fucking head in. It was on the 22nd of July that Zoe talked to her dad, and she basically told him that Andrew was stalking her. 2 days after, on the 24th of July, Andrew messaged her again. This time, he just said, "I love you still, as I just do." 3 days after that, on the 27th of July, he met Zoe and Lee, and Zoe confirmed that Lee was a new boyfriend. I don't know if he'd found him or if they'd arranged to meet. I just don't know. It was also in July that Andrew's sister had come home from university. She'd heard him on the phone to Zoe. He sounded upset and he was crying, saying things like, "I've done a lot for you." In another phone call, she heard him say, "You cheated on me." His sister later said that that was the point that he started going downhill. He was just very down and depressed. She recalls him crying and basically just not knowing what to do anymore. His mom also describes him as struggling to come to terms with the breakup. She said from July 2015, he just had ins and outs of depression, but he never sought professional help. And during these times that he were really down, these times that he were depressed, he'd stay up all night. And one weekend in mid-September, she spoke to him at 2 o'clock in the morning. He was really upset about Zoe, and he spoke about ending his own life, saying that he had nothing to live for. I mean, as a parent, what are you supposed to do in that situation? It is every parent's worst nightmare. There is no cure for a broken heart. She tried to reassure him and encourage him, and she basically said, go and talk to your friends, go out with them, have some fun, forget about it, move on. But it was in that month, September, that Andrew had made the decision that he was going to kill Zoe. By the 17th of September, he was doing numerous searches on the internet. The easiest way to kill a person. How long do murderers serve in prison? How to slice a neck. And strangely, how to smoke a cigar. It was 3 days after those searches that he went to Morrison's. For those that don't know, it's a supermarket, a bit like Walmart. You go and buy your food and stuff. While he was in Morrison's, he bought 2 knives and some latex gloves. At this time, Zoe was on holiday, and Andrew's looking on his phone at flight arrival times and that sort of stuff. He also made a note on his phone of the license plate of the car that was on Queen Street, the street which Zoe and Lee work on. Andrew was trying to identify which car were Lee Simmons. The day after buying the knives, on the 21st of September, he searched the internet trying to find out how to slit someone's neck and throat. And again, he was still trying to find out the registration number of Lee's car. The next day, he was back online doing more research. He was looking at things like how to blow up a car without getting caught. Is it as easy to slit someone's throat as they make it look in movies and TV shows? And how can a car be rigged to explode when started? By the 25th of September, he searched can pellet guns kill? And it was on that day, the 25th of September, that Andrew was first seen between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning on Queen Street. He was walking back and forth in the vicinity of Matalan. He again viewed Zoe and Lee's Facebook, and he searched the internet for pellet guns and gun shops in Cardiff. The next day, the 26th of September, he found out Zoe and her family had returned home from holiday. As a result of that, he made a note on his phone which reads, "Home now. Planning to action. ASAP." The day after that, he was again seen walking back and forth along Queen Street. It's quite clear from this pattern of behaviour that he knows Zoe's supposed to start work at about 6 AM, but he didn't see her. So later on that day, he went and bought an air rifle and 500 pellets. In the very early hours of Wednesday the 28th of September 2016, he searched YouTube for motivation for killing and motivation for revenge. He watched a few videos, one called 10 People Who Got Revenge on Cheaters, another one called 16 Steps to Kill Someone and Not Get Caught, and How Long Do Murderers Get in Prison. He then wrote letters. He wrote one to his mom, his sister, his grandmother, his uncle, and his auntie. These letters were essentially suicide notes. In one of the letters he wrote, "I have struggled with life for a while now, and I could not deal with it any longer. Sorry. I tried putting my negative thoughts and memories to the back of my mind, but it's keep coming back all the time. I'm in mental pain daily. I think ISIS are good guys most of the time, and that's pretty messed up. No one will forget me." Now, I want to say, although that last bit is very random, please do note out that were two separate quotes from different parts of the same or different letters. But the general gist of these letters were the fact that he was saying that he was messed up, he was feeling worthless, incomplete, and that he felt that he was better off dead. After he'd wrote the letters, he left home, and that was about 20 to 6 in the morning. By 5:30, he was waiting by a phone box on Queen Street. At 5:45, he was walking with speed down Queen Street towards Matalan. Zoe Morgan and Lee Simmons were outside Matalan. Zoe were about to start a shift, and Lee had simply brought her to the shop. Then, from out of nowhere, Andy appeared, and he began to attack Lee. Without warning, he approached Lee from behind. He grabbed him, took an 8-inch knife from his bag, and proceeded to stab him in the back. Lee fell to the floor, and Andrew persistently stabbed him in the chest. Zoe tried to pull him off, and in response he said to her, "Get the fuck off me, you fucking cunt," and shouted, "I'm coming for you next, bitch." Lee struggled to get to his feet. Andrew punched him, and he collapsed to the floor. During the attack on Lee, at some point the knife had broke, so Andrew got a second knife out of his bag. This second knife was bigger, measuring 10 inches. The previous one, I don't know if I said that, were 8 inches. This one's 10, and he continued the attack on Lee. At this point, Zoe Morgan's screaming and running towards Boots. In addition, there were also witnesses shouting, "Stop! Stop! Stop!" But nonetheless, Andrew chased Zoe, shouting, "Come here, bitch!" Having caught up with her, he punched her in the face. Zoe's cowering and trying to back away. He stabbed her several times and she fell to the floor. As he did to Lee, while Zoe were laying on the floor, Andrew continued stabbing her in the back. After the attack, Andrew walked over to Lee's body. He picked up the bag which he'd brought the knives in and walked away. Police and paramedics were quick to the scene, and they did give both Lee and Zoe medical attention, but they were both pronounced dead. Lee Simmons died as a result of sharp force injuries to his left chest. 8 stab wounds were found, 4 to the chest, 3 of which were deep, 2 penetrating through the ribs, which demonstrated movement of the knife within the wound. A deep stab wound was present on his right shoulder, and stab wounds were found on his upper back and on his face. The cause of Zoe Morgan's death was sharp force injuries to the trunk. 8 stab wounds were present to her upper arm, base of the neck, left shoulder, and small of the back. A further 3 slash wounds were present on her right thumb, her left shoulder, and on a scalp. One deep stab wound was present on the back of a scalp. 2 others on the scalp, from which a broken tip of a blade was recovered. In addition to the stab wounds, both Zoe and Lee sustained superficial injuries. In total, Lee sustained 14 injuries, and Zoe sustained 32. Having killed Lee Simmons and Zoe Morgan, Andrew walked to his own car and began to drive to where he intended to take his own life. He tried phoning his mom, and he did eventually get through, just before 6 o'clock. The call lasted for 11 minutes, during which he said that he'd stabbed Zoe and a new boyfriend, he thought they were dead, and that he was going to kill himself, also informing her that he'd left her a note. She told him not to do anything other than come home or go to a police station, because she didn't want him to get into any more trouble. And as you can imagine, being his mom, at this point she was so scared that he was going to take his own life. Unbeknown to Andrew, while his mom were on phone to him, she'd got up and she'd gone to wake his sister up. His sister then phoned the police, and his mom did manage to persuade him to go home. He drove through the gates of his family home at 6:10. He had with him both the gun and the knife that he'd used to kill Zoe. At 6:17, he texted his dad, saying, "Thanks for being a pathetic, useless father. Just killed 2 people. Cheers." At 6:30, he posted to Facebook, simply saying, "Fuck." A short while after, he posted again, saying, "Product of society." Shortly after, the police arrived. They seized the gun, the knife, and the latex gloves. He said to the police officer that handcuffed him, "I'm sorry. You know, sometimes you just snap." Obviously, he was arrested, and after he'd been cautioned, he said, "Are they both dead? One of the knives is in the kitchen. It's wrapped in tissue. The other one broke off, and I left it there in Cardiff. I'm really sorry for what I've done. I just lost control." He said to the officer that took him to the police station, "Your head is a weird thing. One moment, that's all it was." In custody again, he asked, "Are they both dead? I just want to know, for peace of mind." When interviewed by police, he submitted a prepared written statement, which read, "I, Andrew Saunders, accept I am responsible for the deaths of Lee Simmons and Zoe Morgan." Then on the 19th of December 2016, he pled guilty to both counts of murder. In court, his mom and his sister, and a few other people that had known him since childhood, were all character witnesses for Andrew. His tutor was also a character witness, and they described him as polite, gentle, and a hard-working young man that was not only a pleasure to teach, but also a pleasure to know. He described him as a gentle giant, who, at the time of leaving school, had developed into a young man of great potential. Of course, mental health experts played a role in this case, but let's not forget he's already pled guilty for murder. So I've dumbed it down quite a bit because it did go on a bit, and most of it weren't essential for you to know. In the first report from a consultant forensic psychiatrist, following meetings with him in November 2016, he diagnosed him as suffering from a moderate depressive episode. He went on to point out several life events which attributed to it. These were the death of his granddad, the ending of his relationship with Zoe, the sudden death of his dog, failure in exams, and his work being less busy. Now I can already see all your comments piling in about you don't go around killing people because work's less busy. On the 20th of February 2017, the consultant had read Andrew's letters that he'd left behind, and he added that Andrew were under significant emotional distress at around the time of the killings. But he did conclude that it's unlikely Andrew was suffering from any mental illness disorder which would substantially impair his responsibility at the time of the killings. But he did go on to say he was potentially suffering from adjustment disorder, in which, during subjective distress and emotional disturbance, patients can present risk to themselves and others. He got 2 life sentences to run concurrently. The starting point for his minimum term was 30 years. The aggravating factors were the significant degree of planning and premeditation, the mental and or physical suffering inflicted on each victim prior to the death, the use of 2 knives which were brought to the scene, the public location of the offences, which had a number of witnesses. The mitigating factors were the fact that he'd expressed remorse. He'd never been in trouble with the police up until this point, his emotional distress leading up to and during the attack, his age, which was 28-year-old at the time of the murders and at the time of his plea, and his admission to guilt pretty much straight away. With all this being considered, his minimum term was 28 years. He was then given a 1/6 reduction for his guilty plea. This left his sentence to be 26 years. So Andrew Saunders was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 26 years. That's times 2 to be run concurrently. But then, In 2018, the Court of Appeal heard how Andrew had claimed he'd been wrongly convicted because, wait for it, he was mentally unwell at the time. Yes, you see, diminished responsibility always works its way in at some point. At the appeal, the judges were told that Andrew Saunders was suffering from an abnormality of the mind. However, don't get too angry just yet because his appeal was dropped. Now, you know in my videos I like to pay some sort of respect or tribute to the victims. And I really couldn't find all that much, so I thought rather than scraping one or two sentences together, I was going to read you the impact statements from the parents. So Zoe Morgan's parents said, "No matter how long this evil individual gets in prison, it will make no difference to the life sentence that we have until we die. We are totally heartbroken, and we will miss our beautiful, intelligent girl for the rest of our lives. We have had a life sentence put on us by this horrible individual. Zoe and her partner Lee could have had a bright and happy future together, and will miss out on so much." A statement from Lee Simmons' family said, "Lee had met the love of his life, Zoe. He could not have been happier. He was the most gentle and caring young man who gave his all to everybody. You could not have wished to meet a more kind and thoughtful person. It's not only had a massive impact on ours and Zoe's family, but we believe also Andrew Saunders' family. We will never be able to forgive him for selfishly taking Lee away from us, but we would like to thank his family for fully cooperating with the police in helping to secure his speedy arrest and conviction." There you go, that's all I've got for you. That is another heartbreaking, horrific case of somebody in the 20s or teens that decided to take someone's life just because they broke up. This is not okay, this is not right. I constantly tell my children that, look, you don't own your partner. It's not yours. Leave it be. If they're happy elsewhere, then what? But the brainwave that's just flashed before my eyes is the hard thing as a parent is, what do you do in that? If you've got a teenager or early 20s that's broke up with a boyfriend or girlfriend and they're really heartbroken, what can you do? You shouldn't go and get them signed off for depression just because they've got blues from separating with somebody. That's not necessarily depression. They don't necessarily need medication. But I suppose, that being said, there is a line where you do need to keep a close eye on them. And if it is going on for some time, or you think it's really bad, then it might be worth speaking to a doctor. But at no point can we blame Andrew's parents for this. They weren't to know what he was planning. They weren't to know what he was doing. And you could say, well, why are we leaving the house so early? The guy's in his 20s. He can do what he likes. It is such a heartbreaking case. And obviously, love goes out to Zoe's family, Lee's family, and just like Lee's family said, Andrew's family as well. Now, I'm quite glad I've done this case because I've just found out this week that a case that I covered not too long ago, Megan Newborough, she was killed by somebody that really fancied her. I think they were starting to form a relationship or whatnot. And he said that he was triggered, whatever, we're not getting into it. But Megan Newborough's family has just started the Megan Newborough Foundation. Ever since Megan's death, they've been raising money for charity in her name. And they've now started this foundation, so I assume they're going to start doing it more regular. They're going to put a name to it and actually go for it. So please do look up Megan Newborough Foundation. I will put the video up here-ish in a minute, so check that video out. Go and show love and support for Megan's family. That is an amazing thing they're doing. The entire point of the Megan Newborough Foundation is to bring attention to these kinds of cases, this exact type of case we're looking at now. And it is so moving that they've used something absolutely awful in their life to try and prevent it from happening to other people. This is an absolute awful thing we've got at the minute. It seems to be, whenever I'm looking up cases, it's partner kills partner kills ex-partner, or somebody kills baby. What is wrong with this world? All this stuff just shouldn't happen. You know, it's just... There you go. I'm going to leave it, because... Just leave it. I can't wait to hear what you think about the video. Please do let me know down below. Is this avoidable? Is there a way that this could be avoided a lot more than it is? Until next week, all I'm saying is I love you. Take care of yourself. Take care of those around you. And I'll see you next week. Bye.